You are welcome back to class. In the last class, of course, we are in the third module. The third module is the essential roles of the Scrum Master. And in the last class, we looked at who a Scrum Master is. And we focused on these characters on the slide. We expanded on each of those characters as the role, as each role a Scrum Master um, in any team would take up. So in the last class, just as a quick overview, we looked at the Scrum Master as an impediment remover, the Scrum Master as a facilitator, the Scrum Master as the coach, the Scrum Master as a teacher, the Scrum Master as a serving leader, or which some other persons call servant leader, the Scrum Master as a team manager, the Scrum Master as um, a change agent, and the Scrum Master as a mentor. And I mentioned in that last class that we should make some effort to picture these characters in our mind. And of course, at any time, anyone needs to ask any question that relates around who the Scrum Master is. Just picture these 8 characters in your mind, and you'll be able to relate on who the Scrum Master is. So, going further into today's class, we will then be looking at the roles of the Scrum Master in Scrum ceremonies and other related meetings. In Module 2, we looked at the 353 of Scrum, talking about the 3 roles in Scrum: the product owner role, the Scrum Master role, and the developer. Um, those are the 3 roles in Scrum. We looked at the 5 events in Scrum, talking about the sprint planning, the daily Scrum, the sprint review, the sprint retrospective, and of course the sprint itself. And we also mentioned 2 other related meetings, talking about the backlog refinement meeting and the parking lot as meetings of value to Scrum. So in this class, we will now narrow down to look at what the Scrum Master does in each of those ceremonies. And this will span from this lesson to some other later lessons. So we would be looking at all this from point to point. So that's just setting the background for us. Let's jump right into the class now. And we would be starting from the first event, talking about the sprint planning meeting in Scrum. So, what does the Scrum Master do at the sprint planning meeting? Bring out my pen. Okay, what the Scrum Master does at sprint planning. Of course, we laying a background for this particular class, looking at what the Scrum Master does in the sprint planning meeting. I believe by now we all understand what the sprint planning event is. Is a meeting where we plan for the sprint, where we look at the task we are to undertake. We look at the tasks making reference to stories or user stories that we need to work on in the course of the sprint. Each sprint in Scrum should have the sprint goal. So during the sprint planning also, we define what the sprint goal for the team is. We looked at while we're talking about sprint planning in module 2, we looked at what we call the inverse criteria. We also spoke about team capacity, team availability. We spoke also about the definition of ready. So all those come together to plan for the sprints. But here we'll now narrow down to see what the Scrum Master does, how the Scrum Master roles in the sprint planning meeting. Right. So this will serve as a guide for us. As I relate on each of these, we would also lay more emphasis on them when we get to the practicals, where whosoever would be rolling as the scrum master of each sprint is expected to undertake these duties. So you should please note these duties down. Whosoever would be undertaking the role of a scrum master in the sprint when we get to the practicals um, should take notes of this. And of course, that would go round from person to person, sprint to sprint. Everyone really would have his or her own turn to understand in practice what the Scrum Master does. So, from the first thing we have here is facilitate the meetings. The Scrum Master facilitates the meeting. In actual sense, the Scrum Master facilitates all team meetings, meetings, all Scrum meetings for the team, making reference to the Scrum team. In an enterprise structure, that is a large organization, the Scrum Master could also step up to facilitate other meetings that are outside his own team. Talking about in a scaled structure where the Scrum Master could be co-facilitating big room planning, or which we also call PI planning, that's program incremental planning meeting. The Scrum Master could also facilitate stakeholder conversations, collaborative sessions, brainstorming sessions, and the rest. But the scope of this training is for a Scrum team comprising the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the developers. So the Scrum Master facilitates all those meetings. So we see it here again that the Scrum Master put together what the meeting is all about. So the Scrum Master clearly indicates the agenda for the meeting. And I've always said over the years of training that anytime as a Scrum Master you are sending out meeting invites, it is of very key importance for you to add the agenda of the meeting into that meeting invite. Do not at any time send up blank meeting invite. It is not the practice of a Scrum Master. And also, when you are adding the meeting invite, also make the agenda clear enough. Make the agenda clear enough for what the objective, the purpose of the meeting um, that would be held is, um, and all other necessary details. There may not be a particular template, it's not so formal or structured, but know that in facilitating meeting you need to first put the meeting together, right? So at that meeting the Scrum Master facilitates the conversations of that meeting. It serves as the moderator or the coordinator of the session, helping every member in that meeting to stay focused on the agenda of that meeting. So the Scrum Master facilitates the meeting. He puts together a clear agenda that would be focused on. And while that meeting is in session, he also helps the participant to stay focused on the track of that particular conversation. So that is what the Scrum Master does. The second one is that the Scrum Master explains and focus on the objective. So we'll be seeing how one duty moves over to another. So the Scrum Master needs to make sure that every member of that meeting understands the objective of that meeting. Every participant in that meeting understands why that meeting is. Um, and a smart Scrum Master will start that process from the meeting invite that has been sent out, which I mentioned earlier, should be clear. So as the meeting resumes, the Scrum Master is facilitating. It takes, or she takes, few minutes, just about 1-2 minutes, to quickly, this meeting, we would be looking at this. As time goes on, it depends on what the team understanding is. The Scrum Master may not need to every meeting come by to say this is the purpose of this meeting, but for that clarity, the Scrum Master also um, makes everyone to understand the purpose of the meeting and narrow down to the objective of the meeting. Then of course the Scrum Master sets the time box for that meeting. If you go through the Scrum Guide again, if you've not, please go through the Scrum Guide again. You will see the time box for each of the sprint planning session. In practice, when we get to practicals, I mentioned in the previous modules that most organizations run 2 weekly sprints. Most organizations run 2 weekly sprints. A sprint is between 1 to 4 weeks. So most organizations run 2 weekly sprints. And sprint planning, well, we were in the last module looking at the sprint planning, we said that on the workplace, a sprint planning could be at an average of around 1 hour for a 2 weekly sprint. But when you go to the Scrum Guide, you'll see the pattern in the Scrum Guide, what a sprint planning meeting should be. For a 4 weekly sprint, the Scrum Guide says the team could have as much as 8 hours of sprint planning. That is actually a full day, a full work day, right? To plan for an entire sprint spanning 4 weeks, right? So then again, the Scrum Master clarifies doubts on the event objective. You need to make sure that everybody understands why we are here for the sprint planning meeting. And in so doing, it needs to ensure that the developers have clarity on what they need to do. In addition, it promotes collaboration and open consensus. That consensus looks at some aspects of the process we embrace while running sprint planning meeting. In the last module also, which takes us to the next one. Let me go to the next one, then I'll come back to that number 5, which says ensures invest criteria is adhered to. Meaning that the invest criteria, we know what invest stands for already. That is independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and tangible. That estimation that the team goes through must be a consensus. So the team must look at it and discuss around it. So the Scrum Master is promoting collaboration and is promoting open communication and consensus. There is that agreement that would come together. When we get to the product owner end, of course, for those who going through both the Scrum Master and the product owner training, we would be talking about um um what was I about to say now? I lost my thought for one moment. Okay, hopefully I'll remember. So the Scrum Master ensures that there is that open consensus where all the team members would agree in a direction. Yes, now I remember. At the product owner end, we looked at the 3 C's. C, that is the third letter of the alphabet. A, B, C. C. We talk about the 3 C's, looking at the card, the conversation, and the confirmation. The card makes reference to the story, the user's story. The conversation is that N in inverse criteria, negotiation, talking about the discussion, the dialogue that must take place. Then the confirmation is that consensus that I'm making reference to now. So the Scrum Master is ensuring that the product owner is not just boxing the developers to a corner. It's not just overburdening the developer. It's not just technically bullying the developer. So he wants to ensure that everything we want to do in that sprint should be as a team and everybody is moving on together. Then going to 6, he ensures the inverse criteria. Of course, we know what inverse criteria is, what it stands for. In the second module, we said that the sprint planning conversation is led by the product owner because the product owner owns the product. The product owner has that um, communication, so to say, with the stakeholders. But the Scrum Master is there supporting the product owner, ensuring that the product owner does what is expected of him or of her to do according to what Scrum had laid down. Then, of course, at the end of the sprint, the team commit to a set of stories. They commit to a total estimation. We are in this sprint, we would be working on 25 user stories. And those 25 user stories equate to, let's say, 65 story points, right? So the Scrum Master wants to ensure that the team is committing to realistic stories. When he observes that the team would not have capacity to fully deliver what they commit to, he guides them, suggesting to them why they should not overcommit to a particular stories that they would not be able to deliver on. In practice, and of course when we get to practicals, you will be seeing how such would play. For instance, you have these 4 guys as developers in the team. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. And each person has just about 6.5 productive hours out of their 8 work hours, right? In those 6 hours, they could only do as much as they could deliver on. So when the team has just about 4 members, 4 developers, as an illustration, but the team is committing to total stories that is meant to be for about 8 developers, obviously they would not be able to deliver on all. So the Scrum Master wants to be sure that the team works based on what they can truly deliver on in the course of the sprint. Then lastly, the Scrum Master also makes sure that all what we go through in the course of the sprint planning, they are documented for transparency, right? So in that documentation, is looking at each of those story, is looking at each story, is looking at detailing in each story, is looking at estimation of each story, is looking at prioritization of each story, is looking at how those stories are fully ready, is looking at the sprint goal as they set into the sprint. All this would come together and he wants to make sure that those are documented. Where a team has a clearly defined definition of done, the Scrum Master also wants to have clear understanding what definition of done is and ensure that that is also captured in the sprints. Definition of done is one of those to be discussed under the product owners training. So, of course, for those doing both, you would have some more clarity on that. But the Scrum Master is also making sure that the definition of done is met also. So, these are some of those things, the key things that the Scrum Master is there for during the sprint planning. So when we say the Scrum Master, when we say the product owner takes the conversation, it does not mean that the Scrum Master is folding his or her arms while the sprint planning is going on. No, he's there fully supporting the team, ensuring that all these are followed, all these are considered, there is clarity of what the developers need to do. The meeting time boxing is adhered to. The objective of the meeting is focused on is promoting collaboration and open consensus. Where we get to the practical again, we'll be making use of what we call planning poker as a tool for that consensus. So we'll be demonstrating that in the practical. So these are all the things the Scrum Master is ensuring that would be done in the course of the sprint planning session. Thank you. In the next class, we would be looking at the daily stand-up, of course, which we also call daily Scrum, and what the Scrum Master does in that particular event. See you soon.